Cranberry Easter by Wendy and Harry Devlin. Look, spring is here. Mr. Whiskers stood at the door of Seth's general store with a mass of pussy willows in his arms. "I've come to plan your Easter egg hunt, Seth," he said. "You dye the eggs this year, and I'll play the Easter bunny." Seth frowned. No Easter egg hunt this year. I'm going to sell the store and head south. I'll be gone by Easter time." "Sell the store!" Mr. Whiskers could not believe his ear. "Suffering codfish, Seth! Who's going to sell me nightshirts and long underwear? Am I going to beat at checkers on Saturday nights?" "It won't be me." Seth shook his head. "Nobody really needs me. Nobody cares. I'm all alone in this big place. I'm ready to say goodbye to Cranberry Port." This had been a long, lonely winter for Seth. His wife had died in late summer, and he missed the sound of a voice at night. Mr. Whiskers wished he could cheer him, but he couldn't think of a thing to say. "And I'm tired of all the gray skies," said Seth. He waved goodbye to Mr. Whiskers, banged the door shut, and went off to take a nap in the back of the store. Mr. Whiskers stopped by at Grandmother's and Maggie's house to share the news. "I'm upset too," said Grandmother, bustling about making hot chocolate. "My friends Nan and Grandma Gates have both decided they can't last another snowbound winter alone on their farms. They need rooms in town, but there are none to be found." "I have an idea, Grandmother," Maggie cried. "The rooms over Seth's general store used to be a hotel. Wouldn't they be just right for your friends?" Mr. Whiskers looked at Maggie in wonder. "You've got it, Maggie," he boomed. "They are filled with old furniture. We'll get Seth to clear them out." Grandmother gave Maggie a delighted smile. I'll start with some calls," she said, and hurried down the hall to the phone. Overjoyed, Mr. Whiskers hastened back to Seth's general store. But Seth turned his back on the whole idea. "Never," he grumbled. "I'm much too tired to clean up all those rooms." Mr. Whiskers wouldn't give up. "Suffering codfish, Seth, those old folks are all alone. Somebody's got to help. They need you." He paced back and forth. "Well," said Seth, "it's a jumble upstairs, but maybe we can take a look." From then on, Mr. Whiskers took charge. After the sale of extra chairs and tables, there was enough money for paint and brushes. Even the mayor and the sheriff joined in scrubbing, painting, and polishing. Maggie and her friends cleaned the windows, and Grandmother sewed curtains. The rooms, bright and clean, were a joyous surprise when Mr. Whiskers, Maggie, and Grandmother showed them to their new residence. Grandma Gates was especially pleased. "I'll never have to go out in the store for groceries again," she said with great cheer. Nan looked out the window to the town square. "Oh, Seth, we can watch this Easter egg hunt from here," she said. Seth threw up his hands. "You win," he told Mr. Whiskers. "I guess I'll have to stay in Cranberry Port a little longer. Maggie, tell the children at school the Easter egg hunt is on for sure." The trees began to bud, and soon there was a magical green mist over all the land. At the general store, Seth found himself listening now and then for bustling sounds from overhead. On Easter Eve, Grandma Gates helped Seth dye the eggs. Easter dawned with a brilliant sun in Cranberry Port. Early in the day, Seth and Mr. Whiskers began to hide eggs of every hue: orange, yellow, violet, behind bushes and trees and under rocks in the village green. Felt a small stir of happiness at being part of this Easter celebration. "Look at the blue skies today," he said thoughtfully to Mr. Whiskers. At noon, a crowd of happy, noisy children began to gather in the center of the village. Mr. Whiskers rounded them up and readied them for the hunt. He called, "1, 2, 3, go!" The Easter egg hunt was on. Children darted among the rocks and bushes in search for eggs. They knew that one prize, a large chocolate egg wrapped in gold, awaited the child who found the most. When nearly all the eggs had been discovered, Seth searched out Mr. Whiskers and whispered a message in his ears. Mr. Whiskers' eyes rolled. He groaned. "You promised," said Seth as he steered his friend toward the store. A few moments later, a big, fat Easter bunny hopped across the square. The shouting children swarmed around him. "What is it?" asked a small boy, pulling on the bunny's tail. "Suffering codfish on the Easter bunny," Mr. Whiskers shouted. "Can't you see?" Over his head, he held a giant basket with chocolate eggs wrapped in gold. "Today there are prizes for everyone," Seth announced. The children cheered. Even the youngest was given a giant golden prize to take home. "This was the best Easter egg hunt ever," one of the children shouted to Seth as they waved goodbye. Seth beamed. "See you next year," he called. "Next year? Did you hear that?" Mr. Whiskers wheeled around and grinned at grandmother. "Seth is here to stay." He started to hop back to dress for grandmother's dinner, but then he stopped. Maggie was telling Seth what they would be having for their Easter feast. "There'll be roast lamb, new potatoes, mint jelly, and cranberry cobbler," she said. "Hooray!" shouted Mr. Whiskers. "Oh, that's just for us," said grandmother, winking at Seth. "For you, there are a bunch of carrots back at the rabbit hutch." Mr. Whiskers began to smile. You couldn't fool him. There would always be a place at grandmother's table for him on holidays. And a place for Seth, too. He knew that friends take care of one another. That's the way it is in Cranberryport, on holidays and the whole year round.